conversation about investing in the Amazon. And good morning or good afternoon to everybody else. And I will share my screen. I have a few slides to talk about our work in the Amazon. Before I do that, I just want to set the context a little bit for the two speakers that we have, myself and Augusto. So you'll hear from two different perspectives in the Amazon. The first one is from NESsT, which has been investing in the region for a few years now, and I'll explain how. And then the second one is the PPA, which Augusto represents, which takes a sector-wide coalition approach to connecting investors to projects in the region. So we thought that this would bring two different perspectives that would make for an interesting debate. So I'll start with NESsT. I think I'll talk for about 15 minutes, and Augusto also will talk for about that much, and then we can move to the Q&A. I'll first talk a little bit about NESsT for those of you who don't know who we are, and I'm seeing a number of familiar faces in the chat, which is great. NESsT invests in small enterprises, businesses that create quality jobs for underserved communities while also sustaining the planet. And by underserved communities, we look for small businesses that can create employment for vulnerable women, at-risk young people, minorities, and smallholder farmers. These are the four groups that we see face the most significant barriers to work. We do our investing in through two programs. The first one is an incubation initiative, which is a 24 to 36 month program that accelerates enterprises towards investment readiness. And for that, we provide a pre-seed capital, typically up to $50,000, and a ton of business mentoring deployed through teams that we have on the ground. We are most well known for our incubation work, which have been the core program of NESsT for about 25 years. And then we have an initiative, which is an impact investing arm that we launched a few years ago. And this provides debt capital to, at the seed stage level, up to $500,000 for companies that have high social impact in terms of job creation and are looking to scale up, but are still very much underbanked. And I'll be talking about both of those programs. So our track record, we were founded in 1997. And as an organization, we've deployed just over $20 million into small and growing businesses in the form of business mentoring and also financing. We've implemented over 300 incubators in about 50 countries. So we have had a lot of experience, all of these across emerging market countries, I should say, primarily in Latin America and emerging Europe, which are the two regions where we have ongoing programs. And in terms of our incubation and impact investing work and portfolios, we have trained about 21,000 entrepreneurs, have gone through our programs of workshops, webinars, group trainings, which has a really wide reach. And of those, we have mentored on a one-on-one basis about 1,200, and we have selected about 200 to receive financing from us, either through our incubation or impact investing arm. And these 200 enterprises have sustained about 70,000 jobs for underserved communities and improved the lives of close to 700,000 people. Now, I'll talk about our work in the Amazon and how we see it from having worked in the region for about, I would say, 6 years now. We focus on sustainable value chains development, as we see that as a significant opportunity to both address conservation, but also poverty alleviation, which for us is at the core of some of the issues facing the region. Obviously, as you all know, deforestation is a big problem. About 20% of the Brazilian Amazon has already been lost. Some of the things that are interesting to know about the Amazon, obviously, it's a huge area that's sparsely populated with a lot of poverty. So that brings a lot of significant challenges when wanting to deploy capital, given the remoteness of some of these communities and how difficult transport and logistics can be. It is also, and this is where we try to keep an eye on, the birthplace of most of the current superfoods that you and I all consume right now. It's a market that is exploding in growth at about 7% annually. And so what we want to make sure at NESsT is that those superfoods are being extracted and commercialized out of the Amazon in a way that benefits local communities, both in terms of social impact and also environmental impact. One of the issues that we see is also gender inequality, which is widespread in Latin America in the agricultural sector. There's a large imbalance between men and women's economic power when it comes to agriculture and forest products specifically. And that can lead to a loss of decision-making power for women, which we try to balance out when we make investments. So our program NESsT Amazonia invests in enterprises that support forest conservations and livelihoods in the Amazon basin. So for us, the two really come together. And our investees, we look for small businesses that are processors or do basic processing. They can be for-profit companies. A lot of them are family-owned that source directly from communities. But also we look at cooperatives and associations. Regardless of the business model, there needs to be a direct relationship with the communities that extract resources or manage resources, and a very strong income generation component. So that's sort of the investees we look for. The geographies, the Amazon basin is huge. We tend to look for companies that are located in areas of high biodiversity, that are either in protected areas such as parks or reserves, or around them in what's called buffer zones or transition zones, where we know there's going to be a high impact on the local biodiversity. In terms of the impact targets, and this is difficult, sometimes it's just, we try to stick to what I sometimes call alternative value chains. So not your traditional commodities, those that are really coming from local knowledge, where communities can add value in terms of how do you protect the forest alongside commercialization. And what a new term people are using is the bioeconomy for that. And these need to be value chains where there's a strong forest management, land restoration, and agroforestry component to that. So the way we approach that is we provide financing and business mentoring to investees that must be underbanked, and we do customized loans. They can be short-term working capital loans. They can be long-term loans for equipment and machinery, as long as there's job creation involved. And we provide also a lot of business assistance. So I'll go through a couple of examples. This one is from a company in the Peruvian Amazon. My examples are from Peru and Colombia, because I thought Augusto would cover Brazil pretty well. So this company, Shanantina, is in the Peruvian Amazon, as I said, and it works with Sacha inchi, which is a seed that's native to that part of the world. And you can see it on the picture. The farmer is kind of holding its hand. It's a star-shaped seed, which is kind of cool out and out of itself. And the fruit is not commonly consumed. It's the seeds are roasted for consumption, and you can also ground them into fine powder, and you can press them for oil. It's rich in protein and fiber, so it's considered one of those superfoods. Shanantina is an export-oriented company that processes the seeds into final products, and that consists of Sacha inchi snacks, oil, and flour. And it works with 150 smallholder farmers. About 80% of them are from indigenous backgrounds. And what's interesting about that is the company works with the smallholder farmers through a government program to restore a forest that has been degraded. So they use the Sacha inchi to basically do secondary forest, restore the ecosystems, and they use management plans where they only use part of their land for agricultural production, and the rest is done under forest management. We provided a loan of $180,000 to the company for working capital, and also to help them build better processing capacity to move into Sacha inchi oil and flour, which they were not doing before. And on the business assistance, we're helping the company to set up a board of directors to improve governance. And we've worked with their team to revamp their financial management system in order to be able to work with an impact investor. And this is part of our mission, is helping graduate these companies to be sort of have good management practices. The next example, so that first example was from sort of our impact fund. This one is from our incubator, and it's in the Colombian Amazon. And the company is Amazonica de Colombia, and they commercialize cacao, which is a nut, which is about the size of a small orange. And the nut themselves are about the size of an almond. And it used to be used mostly for feeding livestock, and the tree was cut down for firewood. But cacao has been discovered as a new sort of superfood, a super nut that's high on, has many health benefits, specifically for skincare. And so it's starting to be used in the cosmetic industry. So this company works with local communities in extracting cacao nut. So this is a really interesting example, because the nut needs to fall to the ground in order to be harvested. So there is actually no human intervention to the extraction of it. And the company then sells the nut as a raw material to processing companies that turn them into cacao oil for skincare products. The company works with about 120 indigenous families, and because the nut is harvested the way it is, we're actually conserving a primary forest. This is actually interesting. So the way NESsT works is we take a blended capital approach. So through our incubator, we can provide grants to these companies at our earlier stage. So we provided a $30,000 grant. This is a program that's done in partnership with USAID and WWF. And the company is using that for basic processing equipment and to make new product batches as they want to start entering the consumer market. And we're providing business mentoring and marketing to help them move just beyond raw material sale and sustainable harvesting to make sure that we continue to conserve the forest. So I'll end just on some of the opportunities and challenges that we see investing in the Amazon. The opportunities obviously is looking at business models like the ones I just showed that are not destroying the forest, but are encouraging land restoration and conservation. So this is, as an impact investor, we have to be very selective in how we invest and in what specifically. The second is making sure that we integrate traditional community cultures. These oftentimes are indigenous or Afro descendants, and they don't have necessarily the same view of profit maximizing entrepreneurship that we do. And so we have to integrate their worldview into these supply chains. Other opportunities we see is we see a lot of cooperatives and associations all working in similar supply chains like Brazil nuts. We see value add in network solutions where some of those cooperatives and associations combine some of their production capabilities into a single brand to reach to have more market power and better brand visibility. Logistics is an opportunity for us. There are interesting operators that are starting to build eco-friendly supply chains that help to connect remote communities that do sustainable development to markets. And then the last one is technology. There's very little technology adoption in sustainable supply chains. Everything is very still manual, very traditional, and we see an opportunity for investing in technologies that can innovate and make these supply chains more efficient. Some of the challenges: lack of investment readiness is by far the #1 challenge. Most companies have weak balance sheets, and I would say poor financial management systems. So as an impact investor, you have to be ready to roll up your sleeves and really help these companies. A lot of communities need to build their livelihoods on several products because of the harvest seasons. So for example, Brazil nuts is only harvested a couple of months a year. So communities also do coffee or cacao or acai. So as impact investor, we need to think of community needs and how they generate income and making sure that we align our expectations with those. Sustainable value chains, all of these products are very new. So researching the demand and the markets and understanding price volatility is very important. Certification are very important for all the buyers, but remain out of reach of many grassroots companies. And the last thing I would say is, as an impact investor, you want to do your due diligence, and finding sometimes service providers that can link impact investors to local entrepreneurs in the Amazon can be challenging. I'm thinking of lawyers and accountants that can help these companies graduate. So I'll stop here. Obviously happy to take questions during the Q&A, and then I'll pass it over to you, Augusto.
Thank you, Loïc. Thank you, Deborah. And thank you, everyone. It's good to see so numerous audience here today. We are going to talk about a very important topic, which is the Amazon. I'm going to present my slides here. Just a minute. Can you all see my screen now? Okay. So let's start the presentation. As Deborah told us, my name is Augusto Correa, and I'm a Curator Executive Secretary of the PPA, which stands for the Partnership Platform for the Amazon. The platform itself is a proposal for collective action, which is led by the private sector here in Brazil and was conceived and financed by USAID, the International Agency for Development of the United States. We were created in 2017, so we are a very recent initiative, and our mission is to foster projects capable of promoting sustainable development in the Brazilian Amazon. Our purpose is to guarantee the biodiversity conservation of this important biome that I'm sure you know inspires global attention. Besides, our value proposition is to encourage the sustainable development of this region by fortifying its impact ecosystem, bringing opportunities for growth and ripening of the most diverse impact business in the Amazon. Currently, PPA has 42 different members, including large companies, institutes, private foundations, and NGOs. Special regard must be made to our deliberative council, which is made up of 15 relevant organizations and is responsible for the decision-making and the main strategies of the platform. Straight talking, the PPA works to promote the sustainable development of the Amazon, assuming that it is a fundamental process to guarantee the conservation of its biodiversity. And to fulfill this responsibility, we understand that it's necessary to strengthen the entire impact ecosystem in the region. The reason why we take on this agenda is based on the assumption of recognizing the Amazon as a biome of global importance, and which presents a very worrying human development rate. Therefore, it's necessary to stimulate its capacities so that it can be used in a more rational way, and we can use the land more rationally. To oversee this proposal that we are presenting of fortifying the ecosystem, we are now introducing the PPA acceleration thesis. This thesis is a kind of methodology that focuses on projects with a deep impact over the Amazon in their various approaches. So we are talking about initiatives that could enhance the impact ecosystem, that could contribute to the conservation of the whole biome, that could stimulate the community empowerment, and most of all, more importantly, that could generate impact pipeline to address social and environmental challenges in the Amazon. To this end, we had more than 40 qualified conversations with various actors in the ecosystem. I'm not sure you're familiar with those, but it's worth mentioning organizations such as Connexus, FAS Amazon Entrepreneurship Center, JBS Fund, Caeté Investments, IDESAN, Climate Ventures, and even NESsT. Moreover, we had also 3 open consultations with the PPA members. We can also mention very, very important organizations such as Fundo Vale, Instituto Humanize, and Ambev. From the thesis itself, it was demonstrated that the vision that is being constructed admits the importance of the bioeconomy as the main guideline in fortifying the impact ecosystem in the Amazon. So we consider the bioeconomy as the main umbrella of the PPA acceleration thesis. And the concept that we consider involving bioeconomy is businesses that keep the forest standing through economic alternatives and using inputs from the Amazon biodiversity. In this framework, we also identify 3 other derivative themes. First one is regenerative systems, such as agroforestry systems, crop forestry integration, and production for seedlings. The second one is carbon or climate, which stands for clean energy, energy efficiency, waste logistics. And the third, sustainable supply chains, which stands for innovation and social environment impact on agricultural chains. Therefore, we have identified some possibilities to drive our action here, always supporting projects and programs that develop impact business in the Amazon. Among those projects, we can also consider programs for the ideation and promotion of entrepreneurial culture with social environmental bias. We can consider projects or programs that accelerate the business in the early stage. Others concerned with impact business in a more mature stage, and acceleration programs for restoration or regeneration businesses, and programs to promote business for local populations. We can consider here riverside populations or indigenous ones. We also understand that the acceleration thesis has the potential to strengthen the ecosystem in all stages of ripeness. We consider the importance of fostering business creation from the moment of creating market concepts to the consolidation of more mature activities, which can access more robust investments in search of scale. Here it is possible to see how the aforementioned possibilities fit to the composition of the ecosystem. Maybe a good example that we have here is a business called Manioca, which is part of the PPA's business portfolio and has been accelerated since 2019. This food company operates in a manioc value chain and recently signed an IPO proposal with the Althea Biodiversity Fund in the order of $1.2 million. It doesn't sound too much, but for the Amazon is a very significant number given the difficulty that we have in finding mature business in the territory. As next steps, PPA will consolidate the support strategy in terms of financial support and also in the scope of certification. I mean, we want to give evidence to projects that stand out in the field with or without the PPA financial support. To finish my presentation, it's worth emphasizing that PPA does not implement any impact project. Our role here is to encourage the creation and the strengthening of existing programs, bring them resources and new partners. Two good examples of programs supported by the PPA are highlighted here. First one is the Cloudland platform, and the second one is UNS. The first stands out for democratizing access to impact investing, which is not trivial in Brazil yet. Not so many people could invest their money in impact business here. In the last roundtable that we had, it was possible to raise more than 200,000 reais in less than 24 hours. The next roundtable is scheduled for early July. I think it will be held in 2 weeks, I think. And it aims to raise over $600,000. So it's a great leap forward to the next roundtable. The second example I brought here, which is UNS, it stands out for having accelerated more than 30 innovative Amazonian business. And it has been the main program to generate qualified pipeline for foreign investment funds. A very good example is the one I told you about regarding Manioca. This is all for the moment, guys. Hope you have enjoyed the presentation. I appreciate your time and attention here, and I will remain available for any question in the Q&A session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Augusto and Loïc, for the great presentation and insights shared. We got a few questions in the chat field. If Vivian, I see you have one. Would you like to share the question yourself? If not, I can read it out for you. Vivian, she's asking, do you use any specific metrics / standards to screen the initiatives / enterprises?
You want to start, Loïc?
Sure, yeah. At a high level, we have two sets of social metrics. We have social and environmental metrics. The social metrics, they focus on basically the poverty levels of the communities that our companies touch, and the employment creation element that the companies will help to achieve, both in terms of number of jobs, but also how much income increase is a company helping these communities to achieve. So those are kind of very broad, the social ones. And environmental metrics, we look at basically the number of hectares that are either under agroforestry practices, forest management, or that are being restored. So the hectares is kind of, we have different KPIs depending on the type of landscape where the company operates. Augusto?
In the PPA, we have two different layers here that complement themselves. First one is the impact itself, talking about social upgrade, increase of revenue, and increase of life conditions. Our acceleration thesis talk deeply about that. So how do we see it and how do we compare to the social index that have in the region? And the other layer that we have is totally regarding the conservation of the Amazon biodiversity. In that sense, we are supported by the USAID methodology to see how the environment is being preserved or not. So we ask for the companies that have been benefiting for our projects to show in some sort of key indicators how they are like managing that and how they are providing conservation to the land they are using.
Thank you, Augusto. Laura has a question for Loïc. Laura, do you want to share your question yourself?
Yeah, sure. Happy to. First of all, thank you very much, Loïc and Augusto, for your presentations. And also, obviously, my question is also for Augusto. I was wondering if in the Amazon, Loïc, you're talking about your offering being within the 500K range of debt capital, and I was just wondering if this is more because this is this is based on the demand that you see from the companies, or is it more based on what you're capable of offering? So that would be kind of like one question. And the second would be, I'd love to hear your views as well around the demand and supply of equity investment in the area.
Yeah, that's a good question, actually. I'll try to answer the second one first. So in the business that we invest in, they don't raise a lot of equity, I have to say. It's not something that they typically go out and do. These tend to be, well, if they're a cooperative or an association, they can't, first of all. So that's right there, you're very limited. The equity that these two sorts of companies can raise is from their members. So you reach a ceiling pretty quickly. In terms of small businesses are structured as, companies, oftentimes they are family-run, family businesses. And again, sort of the equity raise is a little bit delicate. So we've seen some raise equity, or wanting to. I would say it's an exception rather than the rule. And the ticket sizes that we provide, so NESsT as an organization, we focus on early stage impact investing, and we always have. We feel this is where most of impact investing is lacking in Latin America. Impact investors can deploy much larger capital. And so we feel there's a real demand for capital under $1 million and even under $500,000. And so not only is that our mission, but also a lot of the companies, our average loan size is actually around $200,000. So most of the companies we work with are operating in that range, $200,000 to $500,000, and that's companies that typically have under $2 million in revenue. So their financing needs can be, quite limited compared to some of the larger ticket sizes, which Augusto mentioned. That the one you mentioned, Augusto, about the manioc. I mean, that for the Amazon, that's a big investment. I totally agree. $1.2 million.
It's very hard to find a qualified pipeline in the Amazon, isn't it? In the PPA, we had made some investments in the past, especially in 2018 and 2019. But now with the PPA acceleration thesis, we are trying to go to a more capacity building approach. So we are not intending to invest in any startup for the moment, and we are going to invest on the programs to fortify them and make them reach different organizations in the field. We have a spoiler here. We are working with NESsT. I'm sure Marcelo and Renata can hear us here. And we are talking about a project that will incubate forest businesses. So our role here is to promote the development of the program itself and provide a very trustful environment for the other companies that belong to PPA to invest their money in the startups themselves.
Thank you, that's very helpful.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you both. Monica, there's another question from you. Would you like to share your question?
Sorry, yes, thank you so much. Well, as you mentioned, I work at the ILO. I'm very interested in how do you include the local communities in all the activities, because I saw all the logos of the big companies, but how are communities included? I mean, I come from Colombia, so we also have a big part of the Amazon, and thanks to local communities, it has been preserved. So I was wondering, how do you include them in these businesses, or if they are also in some cases owners of these businesses, as Loïc was mentioning in his first in one of the examples with the Brazil nut.
Augusto, you want to start?
I'll start. We need to realize that the Amazon is a very vast territory. In that sense, our strategy here is to rely on our network regarding the companies that have a very established work in the Amazon, such as the mining companies and the NGOs. The NGOs, they have like a deeply relationship with the territory. And as we bring more partners or more members in the network, we can make our look much more wider. In that sense, with the connections that they have, we can try to achieve a more profound approach in the territory. So we rely in the network that we have.
Yeah, it's a great question. And so the way we approach this is as an impact investor. You basically what you want to do is you want to make sure that the businesses you're investing in are properly integrating local communities in their work. And so what we do is we actually do site visits. We go and visit companies even in very remote areas. As a matter of fact, our team currently is in the Peruvian Amazon this week doing due diligence on the cacao business. And so we go out and we work with local consultants from the area to visit farmers and communities and to understand how do they connect with our companies. So first of all, we look at what type of farming practices do they use? Is it sustainable? Is it certified? Is it organic? So on and so forth. And then we also interview the farmers and the communities. We typically interview about 10% of the smallholder farmers of each one of our companies at due diligence. And we try to understand the type of business assistance or technical assistance that they receive from our company and whether it's adding value and are they being treated fairly. The other thing that we do is what type of involvement in the governance of the company do they have? If it's a cooperative or an association, are they represented in decision-making? Do they have a board? We look at gender inequality in governance, which is a big issue. And we try to talk to the company about how do we make women more visible inside of these organizations. And the last thing we do is we look at certain metrics. So we look at how much of the price that the company pays its clients goes to the communities. And that is to us a metric that's very important to track to make sure that communities receive a fair share.
Thank you, Loïc. Karen Sharma from True Footprint has a question on impact assessment. Karen, please go ahead, share your question.
Sure thing. Thank you so much, Loïc and Augusto, for the very interesting presentations. I'm here from True Footprint, and I feel this question might be a bit redundant now, but I'm just curious, what kind of tools, apart from, say, going out to these farms and remote areas, do you utilize to assess the impact of investment and sort of monitoring and evaluating how your directives are actually being followed on the ground?
Thanks for the question. We try to be very close to the implementing partners, having periodic conversation and following the indicators in a very, very closely way. But as Loïc mentioned, have visitors on site are very, very important to see what's happening. And then we try to adjust the methodology as we see the conditions in the field. So there isn't a very determined condition for monitoring and evaluation, as we have a very diverse panorama in the Amazon, but we try to adapt our methodology to the challenge that we face in each program. So this flexibility allows us to see what's happening and try to get a much proper solution to each problem that we face.
Yes, I think I mentioned some of this earlier. So for us, it starts from the investment agreement that we sign with the company. And that agreement lays out very specifically a set of financial metrics, social metrics, and environmental metrics that the company is obligated to report on a quarterly basis. And then on an annual basis, as I mentioned earlier, we actually go out and visit the communities, and we interview about 10% of the farmers at random that we select ourselves from a list provided to the company. And we run the smallholders through a survey questionnaire to understand how the company is impacting their life and livelihoods. So I can sort of happy to share more after the call if you want to shoot me an email, but impact management, it's a very important topic.
Wonderful, thank you both very much.
Next, we have two more questions. One from Sophia. Sophia, do you want to share your question?
Sure, thank you so much. Hi to both of you. I lived in Juína in Mato Grosso for 5 years, and one of the big challenges to any company kind of getting out of an area without water or rail for transport, for at least less carbon intensive transport, was logistics. So I'd be curious to know what are the big wins that you guys have seen for logistics, and then kind of just to tag on a quick question. On returns, due diligence is insanely expensive to do on any of these projects. So I assume that part of your work is grant funded. And of what is invested, what kinds of returns are you able to see, given that you have no upside in debt structures and equity is really hard in the region? Thanks.
Augusto, do you want to take the first question? Because I know the PPA is working on logistics specifically, and then I can answer the second one if you want.
Right. We do not have like a very straight investment in infrastructure, but we have a startup called Navegan, which its business is regarding the riverside transportation in the Amazon. And they are like doing a very, very great job. And they work as a Uber for river transportation. So it does not resolve the whole problem, but it brings some innovation to the field, which can inspire governments and local authorities to drive new solutions to the problem itself. In terms of B2C products, we are also opening new marketplace for the businesses that work with products to the consumers. There is a partnership with Mercado Livre, which is a very known marketplace here in South America that brings up a perfect spot for Amazonian products. and they raised their revenue in about 40% in the last year using this platform. So there are some possibilities, but I think we're going to solve this logistics problem only with a partnership with the government here in Brazil.
On the second question, it's a great one, and Renee is on this call, and she's been wondering about due diligence costs. Also, it's costly in time, not necessarily in cash. So I'll explain why. For example, for a business that our team visited a couple of weeks ago in the Amazon, it will take you 3 days to basically go and visit one business. By the time you fly out there, you have a 5-hour drive, and you visit the company, and then you go see a couple of farmers, and that's another half a day, and you come back, and that's all you've done. So it's costly in time, and so you want to be very cautious about how much kind of flying in and out you do versus having just kind of people, local consultants that you can hire from the community. That, for example, we hire people that have worked in government forestry programs from that region that can go out and do site visits for us. So we can also mitigate our own carbon footprint. In terms of the cash specifically, legal costs, accounting costs of closing deals is actually not that expensive. Given the areas we work in, service providers tend to have quite affordable rates. So that has not been a huge actually blocker to closing deals. I think the investment of time is much more of an issue for us.
Thank you, Loïc. One last question from Stefano. He has a question about the role of the large corporations. Stefano, do you want to share your question?
Thanks, Deborah. Yes, my question to Loïc and Augusto is, I'm just very curious to hear your views about the role of larger corporations. So I think one, can they really help those early stage business, or are there good examples of them helping early stage business become financially sustainable? And then the second question is, how serious do you see their practices being, how genuine they are about the impact, and how serious they are in conserving the environment?
I think we have two good examples here, one with Hydro and other with Alcoa, which are two different mining companies. They are investing within the PPA fund in early stage business in the Amazon, all them with this impact approach. It's very, very interesting to see their interest for this area. But in terms of environmental practice, I think we have like two ways to observe here. First one is how they measure the impact approach over the business that are being benefited from their projects, and the impact over their own businesses. And as we had in Brazil several problems with the mining companies, I'm sure you know, those regulations are being more strict. And as far as I know, they're being severely followed in the Amazon.
Yeah, obviously, Augusto and the PPA has done a lot more work on this. I can talk about sort of who are the buyers of the companies that we invest in. And I think you're right. They tend not to be the mega large multinational companies. The clients of our investees tend to be mid-size buyers, businesses in coffee and cacao, in nuts and seeds that are either Peruvian or Colombian domestic companies, or I would say mid-sized US or European companies that operate and commercialize sustainable products, that look for traceability, that look for sustainable consumption type of products and the storytelling behind it. So I think for us, that's been sort of the that's been what's the driver. Mostly have been these mid-sized businesses, but I think there's going to be a waterfall, right? I think eventually the companies that are part of the PPA will be able to integrate with those early stage companies and supply chains as demand grows and as they become more professionalized and as it makes more sense for them to get involved.
Thank you for all the questions, and Augusto and Loïc for answering. I have one final questions before we close. I was wondering, what kind of development would you like to see in the coming years for your work to be more impactful?
Want to start, Loïc?
Well, you left the easy question for last. I think for us, investment readiness. I think to make our work more impactful is seeing a greater number of small businesses that are investment ready, that have the right business capacity in place, the right financial management tools, to be able to raise external funding from impact investors. I think that's the number one hope that we have for the region.
I think here in Brazil, especially in the Amazon, impact investing is still in a very, very tiny niche. So what do I expect for the following years is that this concept become popular. I want to people like you and me and my parents, my family would understand this concept and put their money towards developing the whole ecosystem. So my idea here, or my dream here, is to see everyone talking about impact business in a more normal way.
Thank you very much, both. I see there's one more question from Monica. Monica, I'm sorry we couldn't cover your question. Can I please ask you to follow up directly with the speakers? I'll be sharing their contact details. I want to thank everyone who joined us for today's IFB session, and a special thank you to our two speakers, Augusto and Loïc, for this extremely insightful presentation and conversation. If you have any additional questions, you are welcome to follow up with them. I'll be sharing the recording and the contact details. And please, if you know anyone in your network that should meet Loïc or Augusto, please make sure to connect them. And if you know anyone that would benefit from the insights shared today, please share the recording with them. Thank you all very much. For those that have the whole day ahead, I wish you a fantastic day. And for the others that are in Europe, a nice evening. And I look forward to seeing you soon at another Impact for Breakfast session. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Deborah. Thank you, Augusto.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.